to ETNOW Startup Central, India's first and only daily show that tells you all you need to know about startups, entrepreneurship and technology. I'm Chandra Shrikant, joining you live from India's startup capital, Bangalore. And as always, we have a power-packed show lined up for you over the next 20 minutes.
That's right, I'm Krishna Kumar, joining you guys all the way from Mumbai's ETNOW's Mumbai studios. I have a very important announcement to make before we kick things off on the show. Let's all wish my colleague Chandra Shrikant a very, very happy birthday right here on ETNOW Startup Central. Chandra, here's wishing you a fantastic birthday and a fantastic year. On that note, let's get a check on all the headlines here at ETNOW Startup Central. A meeting of the state finance ministers narrows down the contentions over GST to just 2. States vie for more control over the goods and services tax, and the centre may have to yet yield. We have a big global exclusive on the show today. Social networking giant Facebook's global head of product partnerships, Ime Archibong, spoke to us on the lessons from free basics in India, Facebook's efforts to connect with developers over here as well. Alibaba Group's goal is to become the equivalent of the world's 5th richest country in 4 years. Founder and chairman Jack Ma lays out the company's ambitions during their first investor day. The Chinese e-commerce giant is also looking at investing in the Indian logistics space. Coming off its first quarterly revenue decline in 13 years, Apple Inc. kicks off its annual Developers Conference in San Francisco, facing questions about whether the company's best days are behind it. However, the focus of the week-long Worldwide Developers Conference is on Siri, and now you've got Siri coming to your MacBooks as well. On our Budding Star segment, we feature Indifi Technologies, a fintech startup that's trying to bridge the financing gap in the MSME sector. We'll be getting Alok Mittal, CEO and co-founder of Indifi, telling us how they are helping small businesses get access to loans and what differentiates them from the rest.
Welcome to the show, and before anything else, Krishna, the top news story in the last hour, of course, has been about GST. You know, the fact that there finally seems to be a consensus as far as state finance ministers are concerned, but of course with the exception of Tamil Nadu, which still hasn't come on board. But there is one important aspect that is of importance, you know, for all marketplaces, e-commerce companies, and that's of course the clause that talks about GST being applicable on all online purchases. This is being included as part of the model law today. To really get more clarity on this, we have our reporter Gaurang, who's been tracking the developments very closely from Kolkata, joining us. Gaurang, thank you for joining us on ETNOW Startup Central. You know, is this already known? Is it something new? And what could the implications be? The fact that GST will be applicable, you know, on all online purchases. Does it mean the next time you shop online, once this law comes into effect, you will have to pay this, and you know, will it replace any existing tax that people are paying?
Well, in a way, it brings a much needed clarity to essentially the entire tax treatment which the entire e-commerce ecosystem will see. So far, we've seen different disputes. You know, you've got tax disputes as far as that in Karnataka is concerned. And really, the e-commerce space was not particularly clear. Now, this model law, which has been made public by the government today, and essentially that will be the framework under which the central and the state GST laws will work. That provides a clear framework saying that all e-commerce transactions will in fact be taxed, and that tax will have to be collected at source. So it will be the tax collected at source for e-commerce companies. The other major aspect which has to be understood, and which has really been something which wasn't clear before, was products like software. You know, it was not clear whether it would be treated as goods or services, and in the case of intangibles such as software, it has been clarified that those will also now be treated as services. So these are the good bits. You know, certainly some clarity coming in. It will be now known that, you know, there will be uniform taxes as far as e-commerce purchases are concerned, and that is of course something which will of course make transactions easier, particularly across state boundaries. What's not so good perhaps is the compliance burden that comes with it. Now, if it's a tax collected at source and there are thousands of transactions, that means, you know, the e-commerce portal or the e-commerce supplier will obviously have to maintain a lot more records, and this becomes particularly complicated when you look at the question of refunds, and that's when the compliance compliance burden could be, of course, something which the e-commerce portals will have to contend with. But certainly some much needed clarity coming out. Of course, there will be taxes now, a uniform tax collected at source on e-commerce transactions, and that's certainly something which where there is some clarity. And on the whole, of course, it could perhaps help streamline the entire e-commerce space as far as taxation is concerned.
Right. Thanks so much for that, Gaurang. And, we will look forward to more clarity as far as this is concerned because, as you mentioned, Karnataka, there's been a lot of back and forth between the revenue department and e-commerce players, but we'll really have to wait and see how e-commerce players also respond to this. But talking about e-commerce, who cannot talk about Alibaba because it's charting global ambitions, and India clearly is playing a very important role in that. Now, Alibaba held its first Investor Day, where its founder and chairman Jack Ma laid out some very important objectives for the company. So just to recap what all he said, he's spoken about how they will have to more than double the GMV of 463 billion and achieving $1 trillion in GMV by 2020. That's really the lofty goal that Jack Ma has set out for the group. And remember, apart from China, cracking overseas markets is going to be a key push for Alibaba, particularly the US and more importantly India. But it really remains to be seen if they can replicate that success here, because remember, China is also a very regulated market. But talking about India, Alibaba is also in news today because the Economic Times reports that perhaps they will start making their entry here in the logistics space, and that they are in talks to invest in a couple of companies, that's Delivery and Express Fees. Of course, no official comment as yet, but remember, Krishna, Alibaba in the last few months has been talking more about an India entry. There are various speculations about how this will happen. If they will, buy out Flipkart, that's a very strong speculation doing the rounds, or if they will do it via Paytm and Snapdeal. But clearly the India market is going to be one that's going to be fought between Amazon and Alibaba in the long run. That's what people are saying, and logistics is clearly going to be a very important component of that.
Absolutely. In fact, Jack Ma has been reinforcing his take, Chandra, about the iron triangle of the best, business model, so to speak, that includes e-commerce, payments, and logistics. He's been calling that the iron triangle. And if Alibaba's intentions are very clear to create that iron triangle over here in India to challenge incumbents like Amazon and Flipkart and Snapdeal, and it's very much on its way for at least what we at the Economic Times are hearing about. So we will be keeping an eye peeled as far as Alibaba's iron triangle formation in India is concerned. But for now, moving on to Apple. Now, Apple's worldwide developer conference this year was full of incremental updates to the operating systems for the Mac, iPhone, Watch, and TV, as well as moves to open up services like Siri and iMessage to developers. Keep in mind, now Siri is available for third-party app developers, and you can do payments via iMessage. That's the latest that Apple is unveiling as part of its developer conference. Keep in mind, this developer conference is a much less glitzy event as compared to the phone launches that Apple does, but a lot of important information comes out of this. A lot of the changes were geared towards moving between Apple devices easier. Siri is now on the desktop as well. That's right, Siri comes to your MacBooks with this particular upgrade. And Apple Pay will now work on Safari, for example, as well. Now, there were also a bunch of redesigns, new notifications and lock screens interactions for iOS. The iOS 10 is a major overhaul, as far as this developer conference is concerned. So there was an entire new iOS 10 which is unveiled, a new command center for Apple Watch, and changes to Apple News, Apple Music, Apple Maps, and other services were also unveiled. Keep in mind, Apple Music has been facing complaints regarding how difficult it is to navigate that. So there was a revamp of the Apple Music, and there was a revamp of the Apple Photos app as well. So those were the top highlights as far as the Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, which has kicked off in San Francisco. A lot of interesting news to watch out for by the time they launch their next iPhone, to see how that iOS will look and how it will be integrated. More importantly, Siri is there on your MacBooks going forward now. But going forward here on the show, we have a big global exclusive on the show today. Social networking giant Facebook's global head of product partnerships, Ime Archibong, spoke to us on the lessons from free basics here in India, Facebook's efforts to connect with developers here, and what Facebook is doing to lessen the impression of being a big brother that is controlling content. Now, Chandra caught up with Archibong in Bengaluru. Listen to this conversation.
Over 9,000 startups and developers that are now in the FBSTART program across 137 different countries around the world. And then to your point, APAC and then India are incredibly important to the program, incredibly important to the developer tools that we're building. The APAC region is the second biggest region in the world for us right now for FBSTART members, and also for broader Facebook developers that are just building across our different platforms. India, as you can imagine, is the biggest country inside of the APAC region in terms of where we're seeing not only the volume of developers that are already inside of FBSTART and on our platform, but also a lot of the growth is happening here too.
And how much of this is really, been driven by the startup boom that we've seen here, so to speak? A lot of mobile-first startups and mobile-only apps, really coming on stream. How much has that really helped?
It definitely is playing a part. Like if you go back to the thesis of FBSTART, it was truly to try to find high-potential entrepreneurs and developers and builders that are building mobile experiences, whether they be apps or whether they be web pages. So the fact that you have hundreds of millions of people that are out here already online. You have another 900 to 1 billion that are offline ready to come into the chamber, and a lot of them, their first experience with the internet is going to be through a mobile device, so that's how people are oriented towards building first and foremost. So you're right, it's not surprising that a lot of the activity is happening out here given the mindset and what people are accustomed to.
Right. How successful have you been in, really pushing this, through local languages? How has the response really been there? And what other initiatives will you be taking? Because local languages is something that pretty much everybody has been talking about, for the last decade, but we haven't really seen it take off in a big way. But do you see that changing now? Because, more and more smartphones are getting sold in pretty much every corner of the country.
Yeah, we're trying to do a lot here. I think Facebook broadly, as we commit to making sure that we're building a global product with a local lens, over 7,000 languages spoken around the world. Only 55 of them are kind of robustly supported across the internet ecosystem. 90 languages are available on Facebook already. We know we have a ton more work to do. We're trying to make sure that we're doing that not only for our products first and foremost, but the products that we're building for developers and for our platforms. So you've seen us, I would say, over the course of the last year, localize a lot of our developer documents and technical specifications so that people that are in India and maybe English is not their primary or their secondary language can continue to jump into the developer ecosystem that we're building here. The FBSTART program, we heard this time and time again too, people wanted more help with the language localization, so we've partnered with companies like Verbalize It, who help people with their translation services and making sure that they can provide some of the package and tools and benefits to kind of developer ecosystem. So it's critical, it's key. When we look at some of the major kind of macro themes that are keeping people offline and keeping more people from connecting to the internet, kind of custom relevant content is a key, one of the top 3 things that I always highlight, and language localization is a major pillar in that piece.
And I've listened to some of your recent fireside chats, and I think one major push for you is to really tell developers and technology innovators on how they can leverage free basics to engage with wider audiences and really build their products. Does it become difficult for you to do that in India? How's your pitch really different here, considering free basics is no longer in the picture?
Not necessarily. I mean, ultimately, free basics is just a part of the broader Internet.org initiative, right? Which is all about getting that next 4.1 billion people across the world connected, and we're steady committed to that, right? That's unwavering kind of commitment from the company's perspective. Free basics was one pillar there. We have things like Express Wi-Fi. We're looking at leveraging satellites. We're putting solar-powered planes in the air. So there's all these different programs and initiatives that we're really excited about that are hopefully going to help more and more people get online. It'll happen naturally, but we're just trying to focus to see if we can help accelerate that. The funny thing is about the Free Basics platform, it's live in now 41 different countries around the world. We have over 600 different developers and services available on the service. It continues to grow, continues to do well. I think the folks in India that are still excited about building for their Free Basics platform can continue to do so, especially as they're looking to try to reach other markets outside of India where it is live right now.
When I talk to startups here, entrepreneurs here, I mean, a lot of them tell me that, irrespective of whether they have a website or not, the first thing that they create is a Facebook page. That's an upside. The downside is some people also see you as this big brother who's sort of controlling, who can like what and who can see what. So, as you become bigger and a big source for a lot of startups to transact business, how are you really going to ensure that, it becomes a more level playing field, that this perception of big brother sort of goes away?
I mean, the one thing that we stay committed to is the fact that as a technology company, we always want to be in the world of creating opportunities. That's the way I define it, and I think that's the way that Mark would talk about it too, which is just like, how can we build the opportunity for a startup, a business, an individual voice, you name it, right? It has the opportunity to share their creativity, their voice, their innovation with the rest of the world. And I think so long as we stay committed to that, which, I've been at the company now almost going on 6 years, and we've been around for a while, and I've talked to everyone and understood kind of the value alignment of kind of the senior folks and also folks that are coming onto the kind of the team right now, is that we stay committed to that opportunity creation. And so long as we're building tools and opportunity creation for people, I think that we're going to be fine. You're going to see startups, you're going to see businesses and entrepreneurs continue to lean into our platform because they realize that it gives them the channel to reach more people. Right.
Last couple of questions really. Will you also be bringing, a lot of people from Silicon Valley to interact with developers here, from the Facebook global community to really help them with, new tools that you have? Is that going to be a key component of it?
Yeah, I think it's critical. I think it's really, really important. If you were to kind of go to the developer event, the FBSTART event that we have right now, you would see from the Facebook team, you have everyone from the partnerships organization, you have engineers, you have PMs, you have kind of the open source team, and kind of can go on down the line of how many people are coming here to try to make sure that we are learning from the ecosystem, and then understanding how we can add value to the ecosystem. So yes, it's a critical piece. We are a company now of 1.65 billion people across the core Facebook app, 900 million across Messenger, 400 million across Instagram, 1 billion across WhatsApp. So we've been this global company and this global reach company, but we need to do an increasingly good job of making sure that as we continue to scale, we also are thinking hyper-local too. An important part of that is making sure that we can meet people where they are at geographically, because once you're here geographically, you get a better understanding of where people are, I think both technically and from a product perspective, and we can figure out how to better serve them. So it's an important piece. We'll continue to have people coming and spending more and more time here, learning from here, and taking that back to headquarters, influencing roadmaps.
From a social networking giant to a budding star that we have on the show today, we are of course talking about Indifi Technologies, which works as a platform to help MSME companies access finance. Now, Indifi has been founded by venture capitalist turned entrepreneur Alok Mittal. We caught up with him. Let's really listen into what he has to say on what sets Indifi apart.
SME funding is a large problem. IFC has estimated this to be a $380 billion unserved need. And to that extent, that we think that the challenges in this market are not competitive, but whether we can go in and solve the problem in the chain. Our view of the problem is that there are really two issues. One, SMEs are very heterogeneous, and hence taking a segment by segment view of SMEs is important to be able to solve that problem with any degree of depth. So that is one thing that we do, which is to go to different segments and construct specific products for those segments which cater to the needs of the SME as well as can provide better credit quality. The second piece that we are solving for is availability of data, where we partner with large supply chain aggregators and essentially unlock the data that is present in ERP systems for the purpose of credit evaluation. The typical customer that we are targeting could come from being a cab driver to a kirana store owner to a small travel agency or a seller on an e-commerce platform. Typically in the nomenclature they are referred to as micro and small businesses and will have revenues which are under 10 crores on a typical basis. Our loan sizes to them can vary between about 1 lakh to about 25 lakhs unsecured loan. We average currently about 5 lakhs per loan as the disbursement amount. So that's kind of the nature of our customers and the nature of loans that we make to them. We went live in the market in October, so we are about 8 months old in the market. We have crossed more than 500 loans and scaling up rapidly on that number. We are live in 6 segments right now: travel agencies, hotels, sellers on e-commerce portals, cab drivers, grocery stores, and manufacturing businesses. We think that the segment focus is extremely important because it allows us to solve for credit eligibility issues on a segment by segment basis and actually use the data that we are getting from our partners to be able to make those decisions. So our approach will remain segment oriented in that sense. So the market is pretty large. The unserved market for MSME credit is estimated at about $380 billion. So in some sense, the challenge for startups in this segment is not lack of market size, but that the market is too big, and hence we have to pick our niches where we think we can solve for this problem. And as you are aware, we have picked the supply chain opportunity to try and solve this market. We think that more and more small businesses will start to fall within our thesis of working through supply chain partners, being data rich over the next 4 to 5 years, and that is the trend that we are hoping to ride on. Clearly, a company at a startup stage needs to grow fast. We are planning to grow several folds for the next few years. Financial services businesses, especially lending businesses, are fairly thin margin, and to that extent, unless you reach billions of dollars in loans under management, it is not really a large business. So the scale aspirations that we are carrying with us are fairly significant.
And with that, we come to the final segment of the day, Number Crunch. And the number we are crunching for you today is $2.8 billion. Now, that's really the amount that LinkedIn co-founder and chairman Reid Hoffman has raked in after LinkedIn got sold to Microsoft. It's a business that he's built over the last 15 years. And I guess all that effort has finally paid off, because being a prominent shareholder, that deal has certainly made him wealthy multi-fold. I guess it's a lesson for all startups on how, patience really pays off. I mean, 15 years is a long time for an internet company, but it really paid off for LinkedIn. And I guess, Krishna, that means good news, because knowing Reid Hoffman, he's not going to put that money to rest. He's definitely going to start investing in more startups.
Well, hopefully some of that finds its way to startups here in India, and I'm really confident that a lot of it just might consider the kind of markets that both Microsoft and LinkedIn have over here. But Chandra, looking at that number, is another number I want to throw out just for keepers' sake. 17 million, that's the number of passwords that they found when the LinkedIn database was hacked in 2012. And that's the reason how Mark Zuckerberg got hacked as well. Hopefully we don't see a repeat of that. But on that note, we wrap things up here in this edition of ETNOW Startup Central. But you don't go anywhere, keep watching ETNOW. Coming up next is Market Watch.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNOW, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNOWlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNOW.